This is Brazil Lab, which is hosting this event together with the Committee on Film Studies of the Humanities Council. And we have the co-sponsorship of the Department of Anthropology, the Department of Spanish and Portuguese, and the program in Latin American Studies. It's a great, great joy to welcome Sandra Kogut back to Princeton. And it's wonderful to see you all here to continue the conversation that started yesterday afternoon with the screening of the memorable documentary film At This Moment in the Nation's Sky. Shot during the turbulent months leading to the recent Brazilian presidential elections and the subsequent storming of Congress and the Supreme Court on January 8th, 2023, the film traces those events through a handful of intimate perspectives, bringing the personal and the political into sharp relief. And Sandra can tell us a little bit more about the making of the film as well, because she has been working with several of the characters that appear in the film before the idea of the film in its current form actually crystallized. So this is very interesting. She has an incredible archive, which she called the speech machine, that she started to develop with people across the country on how they were thinking and narrating the present political moment of Brazil. And the film, captures, this time in which the far right tries to hold on power and democracy is at risk, revealing two parallel worlds struggling to recognize one another. Today is our chance here to pause, reflect, and think together with the extraordinary Sandra Kogut. We are privileged to have her here and also our own Pedro Meira Monteiro to help moderate the discussion. We will first hear from Sandra, who will say a few words about the making and the bringing of At This Moment in the Nation's Sky to life. Sandra is a most wonderful storyteller. She has an incredible ethnographic sensibility, and she's the director of several award-winning films, including A Hungarian Passport, Mutum, and Three Summers. And her work has been featured at MoMA, the Guggenheim Museum, the Harvard Film Archive, the Flaherty, and the Forum of Images in Paris, among many, many other venues. So following Sandra's remarks, we will hear from Pedro, who is the Arthur Marx class of 19, professor of Spanish and Portuguese and chair of the department. Pedro works at the intersection of cultural history and literature and is the editor, translator, and author of numerous books, including The Other Roots, Wandering Origins, The Roots of Brazil, and the Impasses of Modernity in Ibero-America, and more recently, Nós Somos Muitas, Ensaios sobre Crise, Cultura e Esperança. So Sandra and Pedro will be in conversation for a few minutes, and then afterwards we will open up to you all. We would love to hear your comments, questions, and to think together about the broader issues that the film raises about democracy and authoritarianism in Brazil's crossroads and the role of the arts and filmmaking in our world on edge. So please, let's give our warmest welcome to Sandra back to Princeton, and our welcome to Pedro, who will help to moderate the session.
Thank you. I'm super happy to be here. I'm very thankful. I still remember when João Bill was helping me translate the title of the film into English. Should I have a comma? No. And so it's really, really nice to be here. It was great to have the screening last night. The short exchanges I had already yesterday were very, very rich, and I going home, I said, this is Princeton, the high level of this audience is incredible. Anyway, thank you, Brazil Lab, Miqueias, Pedro, and João, of course. This film is part of a bigger project, as João said, that started a few years ago called The Speech Machine. I was at the Radcliffe Institute in Harvard, and I was developing, I wanted to do something about I knew the year of 2022 would be a very decisive and important year for Brazil, and I wanted to do something with the common citizen. Like, I wanted to talk about politics, but not talk about politics in the way we usually do when we make a film in that context, which is go after the candidates, talk about the ideologies, the programs. The political programs. I wanted to talk about politics in everyday life, to the anonymous citizen, the common citizen, inside the house, amongst families, at work, in everyday life. So that's how it started. It went through different phases. I also wanted to create a kind of a archive of the present. Because as I briefly said last night, I was really thinking, how are the history professors going to do in the future when they have to explain this moment? How are we going to explain to our kids, to our grandchildren, what's going on? Because I had this feeling of being stuck in a kind of an eternal present. As if you spoke about storytelling, there was not a logic. It was impossible to understand really what the thread was. And the scandals were so huge, the news was so hard to believe that they were always making you forget what had happened yesterday. So it was as if it was only the instant moment that we could think about. So I thought, I'm going to try to create a timeline of this moment with these people, and I started looking after all kinds of different people. And in fact, I produced a huge archive beyond this film. A film is only a film. You have to try to make it become a whole. And this is always a big challenge. It forces you to keep things out of it. So anyway, I'd be super happy to answer questions and talk more about this, but this is how it started. Thank you. Without breaking anything.
Sandra, thank you. Thank you for being here. Sandra has a long history with Princeton stories, and she's very much involved with Princeton. And since the beginning, I mean, when I arrived here at the, was it the first or second iteration of the then?
That's not going to make us look very young.
No, that is true. That is true. But anyway, the rest is history, and here we are. But you were here at the very beginning, I remember that, and showing actually o passaporte húngaro, the Hungarian passport. And I have a question. I think it might be a good way to just kick off and start our conversation. I'm sure everyone has questions. I assume, and I think that everyone here has watched the movie either yesterday or before. But I have a question about how you see this movie within your filmography. I mean, all your work, because there is something, and we were discussing this earlier, super interesting about the way you listen to people, which is sort of basic for this ethnographic sensibility, but also it's basic for a good documentary maker. But you are not only a documentary maker. I mean, you've been working with fiction, you've been working with literature in film. I mean, I'm thinking about Mutum, which is a gorgeous, wonderful adaptation of a story by Guimarães Rosa. You also have Three Summers, in which I think it's all already related to the Lava Jato moment. So for those of you who are familiar with Brazilian, recent contemporary Brazilian history, this is where the seeds of the big moment, this moment when you cannot actually locate what is going on, you cannot stop, because all of a sudden, as you put it very well, I mean, you were sort of overwhelmed by what is happening. It's much beyond what we can even imagine. So, and this was starting there. So there are, I think, threads that we can follow in your own filmography, and throughout it, I see this desire to kind of listen to people in a common people, I mean, not public people. So you were sort of trying to find corners of the public space where people are thinking, feeling, living, and we are not necessarily paying attention to them if we have a sort of a macro vision of what is happening. But also this passion of yours, if I can say this, has to do with finding the nuances of what people think and not judging, which is also a big issue. I mean, whether we are anthropologists, filmmakers, literary or cultural critics. And in this case, in the case of the movie we watched yesterday, you did something almost impossible to my mind, which is to find some sort of balance in something that is the moment of polarization in the world, in Brazil. It is true, and I want to tease you about this, that at the end you sort of, we can see your heart, your democratic heart, when you chose to end up the movie with Jair Vai Embora, etc., the song. But still, there is something about the way you treated Ferreirinha, right? I mean, which is a character you have created too, and I would love to hear about this process which is very Coutinho-like. I'm referring to Eduardo Coutinho, and Sandra was here also when we promoted an homage to Coutinho, and he died 10 years ago. So there is something there about the way you turn people into characters, but with full autonomy and dignity, without kind of judging and without prejuízos, without prejudgments, right? And this is a thread, I think, that goes throughout your work. Either it's documentary fiction or something in between, which you also work with, I think. So I just want to throw this for you because I think we all want to hear from you about this movie, but what it represents in your career also.
Okay, thank you for this. I mean, I could stay maybe many days talking about all this. I'm gonna try to be brief, and I'm gonna try to focus more on this film that is very concrete and many people saw. But just to say a few words about what it means regarding my career, I don't know how to say, the other films. I think for me, making films is really, it's much more than a job, than some work. It's really an existential thing. It's the way I am in the world. It's from where I look. It's the tools I have to interact with the world. So it's really something that I could not consider not doing. Although it's not very easy, it's full of sometimes frustrations and impossibilities, but it's just who I am. It's my little place in the world. So I think, of course, there are many different connections you can make between the different films, that even for me sometimes I start noticing much later, because every time I make a film I have the impression that this is completely different from what I've made before. And then with time I look and I see there is a lot of logic in that. And I can see that there are things that are constantly coming back, like I'm always interested in characters that are often the characters that are not the ones that are usually up front, under the lights. I'm always interested in the ones that are on the side, in the back, sometimes off screen, and this is something you can see treated differently in different films I made. In this film you saw yesterday, it was clear to me from the beginning that I wanted these characters, because I find this place a very privileged place. When you are at the center of the events, when often the fact that things are happening depend on you. You're a very important person to make all this happen, but nobody even knows about you, nobody is paying attention at you, and you're seeing everything. So I wanted these kinds of characters when making this film. And the whole film is made like this. If you think, for example, when there is the inauguration and Lula is going up to receive the presidential faixa, I don't know. You don't see the image that we all saw in the news all the time, this frontal image of him. You see from the side, you see from where one of the characters is. And we always see him from that place. And I think it was important to look from that place because I wanted to stay at human level. It's not a film, you don't have analysis, you don't have big theories, you don't have the ideological project explained in each side. You just have how this affects people in their lives, in the way they think about themselves, in the way the relationships they have with each other. And this is what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about politics in everyday life. Because, and why? Because I believe that this polarization, this huge divide that we live now, and you know very well about this, the only way to deal with this is trying to look at the people, at the human who's there. Like this character, Ferreirinha, who became the protagonist of the film, who is a Bolsonaro supporter. I made many decisions while making this film to make people be able to look at him, because I didn't want the audience, the viewers, to demonize him. And I had the choice, because he is a gun supporter. I have many fights with him, many discussions throughout the making of the film. And at the editing, I thought, if I put these things, first I think it's going to be an abuse of power, because I'm the director, so I can tell the story I want. I can show people in the light I want. I have all the power. And I don't want to make a film against the characters. You know, I want to make a film where you look at this person as a person. Because there was a time where this guy was not like this. He was not believing those crazy things. He had not been yet been captured by this parallel reality. And I think now as a citizen that this is something I can do, and I think we should do. It's a way. So this was one thing. The other thing was, so you spoke about judging the characters. If there is something that is maybe the reason why I make films, is I don't believe in judging characters. I think it's the opposite. I think you make a film because you want complexity. You want to not know. So judging supposes that you know and you know better. And so not only I don't judge, but I didn't want to invite audience to judge. Now, does that mean that I don't have a clear point of view, a clear place in the film? No, I don't think so. I think it's clear in the film that I am in the side of democracy from the beginning. That's why it starts the way it starts. But I don't think a film should tell people what to think. And I decided, because I didn't want to make the film with me fighting with this character throughout the whole film, I decided I was only going to speak in the film when it became impossible not to speak. So that's why I only speak at the end, in the beginning a little bit, and then at the end. And because I think when I speak to him, it synthesizes everything. Thanks to him, including, because he says, you live in one country, I live in another. You are in one reality, I'm in a different one. And it's true, exactly, he's right. This is the point. So I think both of us, we say what's essential there. And I thought the speech machine, we are already in such a loud, busy, overloaded with text moment that the less we say, the more power it will have. So I don't think I'm neutral. I think a film is a point of view, is a gaze. That's why we sign a film. It's not vanity. It's on the contrary, I believe. It's humility, to be humble. Because when you put your name in a film, you're saying, this is only me, the way I see this. It's not the truth beyond the film. It's the truth of this film. It's not an absolute truth. So I think the film has this, it's clear that has this point of view. And I think a documentary doesn't have the same agenda that news have, journalism, which is also super important. Because, I'm talking a lot, né?
That's the idea.
I'm gonna, because news have this concern about neutrality. And there was a moment I was making the film and I thought, well, I have like 6 characters from the left, for the democratic field, and 2 characters are from Bolsonaro support. And then I realized this is a wrong calculation. There is no such a calculation because it's not a film about this side or this side. It's a film about Brazil. It's a film about a moment of fear where everybody is under the same fear. They're looking from different places, but they are under the same sky, and they are in fear. So when I understood this, it became much easier. But all these things you start understanding as you go with the film, as you make the film. And it was an impossible film to make, as I said yesterday. And I can explain when someone asks why.
That's how documentary filmmakers work. No. It's, I think we have...
Okay, so let's collect a first bundle of questions. So we have Rodrigo, Fernando, and Adam. The first bundle, and then Sandra, you can just...
Okay, as you see, I talk, I talk.
You have let it to address the questions individually or collectively. And then we go on next round. But thank you so much, Sandra. This was awesome.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. I had a wonderful time last night. Also a very tense one, watching all the images and thinking, oh, not this again. But I'm really curious about if you showed the movie to Ferreirinha and how Ferreirinha reacted to the movie. And you were talking about judging and journalists. And when I was watching the movie, I remember Pedro just mentioned Coutinho, and I remember Peões, Coutinho's movie. And I was wondering if you thought about this movie when you were editing yours, because I guess they dialogue. But also, I remember Coutinho saying that he doesn't, not that he doesn't judge the characters, but he is not worried about if what the characters are saying, it's true or not. So I'm curious about that as well. If you thought about that, kind of fact-checking or something like that.
Okay.
Fernando?
Thank you, Sandra. It was incredible. Also, to hear now what we saw yesterday was actually quite interesting too. I would like to hear more about dichotomies because I think it's quite easy right now in Brazil for us to basically portray that we have two groups and we cannot talk to each other. But I think you're trying to engage with Ferreirinha and somehow you're trying to have affect to him, although you don't really agree with him. So can you talk a little bit about the process of you engaging this character and how in the end, I don't think you're going to be friends with him, but somehow you got engaged with him and
Right.
care for him somehow.
Okay.
And thank you. My question, I think, might be highly related. You mentioned in your introduction yesterday afternoon that it was necessary to construct a new way of making a film in order to address trust in the context of a very polarized situation. And because you need to have trust with the people who perceive you as being on the other side. And I wondered if you could expand on how you address that concern to develop trust. And it might be, I think there are probably some things that we could just see in the documentary itself. Like you mentioned, late there, you thanked people for their personal diaries. And so I imagine that this was a component of it, but I don't know. And so I just wondered if you could expand on this notion of building trust and how you did that.
Okay. Wow, marvelous questions. I'm glad I took notes. Okay. Ferreirinha, Coutinho. So, you said that Coutinho, I'm very honored to be associated with Coutinho. He, as probably everybody knows, was and he was a person I had a very close relationship with. And I really think he knew a lot about engaging with people, of course. And so about what's true, what's not true when you talk to a character, I think there is the question about truth is much more complicated. You know, what's true in that moment, what's true in that relationship. But I think as a filmmaker, and this goes for documentary and for fiction, I'm always thinking about what's my place when I make a film. What's my place? What do I have the right to do? And everything that happens in a shoot, you know, people say that being a director is asking the question, where are you going to put the camera? Because when you arrive on the set, everybody asks, where's the camera going to be? Because everything else is going to be organized regarding the place of the camera. And it's a tricky question, right? Sometimes you might not know. Everybody is waiting. But I always know where to put the camera because to me, putting the camera is a materialization of a relationship I'm having with those characters, with that scene, with that emotion, with that moment. And I think the truth is there, not necessarily in what they're saying, because often there is a subtext that is much more important. Now, I think I'm going to answer the questions a little together because they are connected. So, I'm not fact-checking, you ask me. What I'm interested is that that person is saying that thing at that moment. And I don't need to fact-check because I know the context of that, right? And how did I get a character as Ferreirinha? And how complicated it was. And why did I say I had to invent a way of making a film? Because it's true that if you don't have trust, it's impossible to make a film, I think. I think everything comes from trust. You sign contracts, but the real contract, the real engagement is in the relationship. Because people sign contracts and then they change their mind and they sue. And that's also why I'm very present in every step of making a film, because I think as the director, as the author, I have personal responsibility about everything that is happening in the film. So Ferreirinha, I wanted to have characters that were Bolsonaro supporters. These were the hardest ones to get. That's why also you see that you hear that woman in the beginning of the film. Because I wanted to make it clear, we are starting from this place. It's impossible. It's impossible. So I had many people that I worked with, sometimes for months, and then they disappeared, they changed their minds, or they just said no from the beginning. And Ferreirinha was one of them, and the other guy too, Osvaldo, that managed to stay. Why? I believe, one, because I was always very transparent. They knew what I thought. I never hid anything. And I always said to them, I'm here not to convince you of anything. I'm here because I'm sincerely curious to try to understand the way you see it, what you think. I think they thought they would convince me. But I always said I was never going to convince them. I was not there for that. And it was very honest always. And this is something to me very profound in filmmaking. Like, I would never use a hidden camera. I would never trick the characters. Because I believe this is going to break the only thing that makes the film possible. And when I am being filmed, for example, it happened to me that I'm being filmed, and I see that it's being made in a way, I know this feeling, you know. People say, oh, how sometimes there were things I made, like the camera is not there. Are you hiding the camera? I believe the opposite. I believe the more visible the camera is, if what's going on is important to the characters, the more true, the more real it's going to be. The less bothered they're going to be by the camera, because they know the camera is there and they don't care anymore. They're not trying to discover what's going on. And I think this helped, because they were never trying to find out something hidden that was going on. No, it was always very clear. Now, it means that and also the fact that it took such a long time, months, so created a relationship. Now, the diaries. I thought I wanted to make a film that would be in different places of Brazil. Many times we would film the same day, because election day, first round, impossible to have crews everywhere, right? But I also thought that the way I would build trust would be to ask them to start with diaries, to ask them to make video diaries with their phones. Because it would be a way for me to enter their lives with them around the idea of a film. Because we would be talking about the images that they were producing. So everything was clear. And they were inviting me into their lives. So they started doing those diaries. They would send me the images. And then he goes to this church. Okay, can you film this for me? Can you do that? Can you show me this? And so I started to map their lives, their universe with them, not invading it. Very quickly, I understood that this was super interesting, but I would never be able to make a film only with this, because it was just shots like this, the sound, it was impossible. So I had to have the gaze of the film. But because it was also impossible for me to be at the same place, at the same time, in different places, and to have people, I decided to train people that were close to these characters, where they lived. So, for example, one of my favorite characters, the woman who is in the Amazon, who handles the voting, this place where she is, called Anajás, is very, very far away. It's 36 hours by boat from Belém. So there was a guy who worked at the mayor's office who had a camera. This guy had never seen a documentary in his life. But I trained him. I make an image, send me, look, you always have to film like this, never come close, never move the camera, never this. And he became part of the film, you know, and he made fantastic images. And so when I said they had to invent a way of making the film, it was this. I think every film has a way to be made, and discovering that is a big part of the work. So when you enter a new film, you enter completely clueless a little. I mean, you don't know how you're gonna do this. Do you need a crew? Do you need a big, a small camera? Everything is gonna come from the film. These answers are gonna come from the film. So that's how I was able to get all these people in different places and stay in the language of the film. Now, I can add something that you haven't asked, but it's connected. That's why, thanks to this dispositif, we say, this. Yeah, but it's a technical word in French when you say, how do you make the film? What's the dispositif? Is it gonna be all in one day? Is it gonna, you know? So thanks to the setting, we were able to have the images of the January 8th. Because, I don't know, maybe someone was gonna ask this. These images are incredibly impressive. And I realized not long ago that we are the only people in Brazil who have made film, cinema images of that moment. Because the press, the media was not able to go inside. Every image was from a helicopter or from a wind, I mean, from afar. Or in the news, you always saw the images of the cell phones of the invaders. But I had a guy in Brasília who was one of those partners, who had been in the film for months, who knew exactly what I wanted, who was so captured by the film that he was always talking to me saying, I saw something today you're gonna love, and would send me a take, you know. He was crazy about the film. A guy who had never made a film, who, when he first arrived in the film, it was a fight because he was doing things in a way that I couldn't stand. I said, no, it's not like that. No, I'm sorry, this is not gonna work. And he said, Sandra, how do you want? Teach me. I wanna learn. So he became, and so in the January 8th, I called him and said, Luis, he said, I'm gonna go there. I'm gonna dress up in yellow and green, and I'm gonna go. And he made those incredible images, you know, that we happen to be the only ones to have. So, and this system also allowed me to speak to the characters while that thing was happening. So it was a way to make this film, you know.
Okay, so we have a few more. Yes, please.
Incredible and so kind of captured by everything you're saying about it. My question has to do with the place of the Justiça Eleitoral in your film. The workers that you feature as kind of the infrastructure of democracy, right? I mean, all the work, the time with limited resources, sometimes precarious, even dangerous conditions, and how committed they are to that. And so I would just love to hear you speak about both the workers and also what you felt, your kind of thought process about how you positioned the Justiça Eleitoral and that infrastructure in the film, especially in those instances where you're also telling us about some of the decisions coming up top that was also shaping the way in which the rules around the election, right? And then who would be enforcing those rules.
Okay.
Thank you, Sandra. I literally had the exact same question.
Oh, how perfect.
That I was personally very moved about your work with the electoral workers. I think it was like kind of a background force that you don't give like too much. They don't necessarily stand out in the film because they are not like the main characters, as of course have Ferreirinha. But I don't know, maybe because I grew up in like right after the redemocratization in Brazil, and I remember the building of that democratic culture, and even people saying like, no, your vote is secret, right? So if people thought that you could not tell people who you're voting for. Actually, you had the right to not share because you couldn't be forced to vote for anyone. You could vote for whoever you wanted, right? And the beauty of that democratic culture was something that I remember very strongly. And to me, as your name is,
Melissa.
Melissa, desculpa, Melissa. As Melissa was saying, I saw that like the integrity of those workers, right, in the midst of that dispute. So I was very moved by that, those characters. So I literally had the same question. Wanted to know what you were.
Let me answer that. Yeah, I'm happy you're asking this because, you know, the word that we were talking about all the time, democracy. Democracy is at stake, democracy is under threat. But this is democracy, the work of making an election happen, you know. And I thought, I want to show the work of democracy. Now, one thing that I wanted that all the characters would have some connection to the electoral process. So you have the wife of a candidate, you have the workers of the electoral court. You have the women, the one that is checking if everything. So, and when I decided this, I reached out to the TSE. TSE is the electoral court in Brazil, which used to be to me something that I thought, why do we have an electoral court? You know, it's not necessary. It's just it's a bigger structure that maybe we wouldn't need. But in fact, in the latest years, I completely changed my mind. I understood it's super important. And it's certainly the reason why we're not in a dictatorship again. And so the electoral court, which is very quick because it's only judging electoral crimes, that was able to condemn Bolsonaro very fast. Anyway, I reached out to them and explained that I wanted to make a film about the elections, during the elections, with people who had some connection to the elections, and exceptionally, they gave me all access, you know. I was lucky, I mean, for a reason that it's unfortunate, because they was under such great attack that they thought it was a good idea that someone wanted to make a film. So I had an access that I would never have normally. And that's how I got to certain of the characters, like the woman in the Amazon, because then I knew things that I wanted. I wanted a character in an isolated place in Brazil because I find incredible this huge operation that they put in place. I wanted characters in the west part of Rio where it's very militia controlled and very much for the far right. So I had ideas of places and situations I wanted, and they gave me, I even underwent a course. I learned a lot about the elections, and I think what you see in the film makes that discussion at the end that I have with Ferreirinha about the elections, you understand that it's not about an opinion. It's not what you think. You just saw the process. So you just saw how solid it is. So I think that is the answer for this discussion. And because it comes before, it's throughout the film, when he doesn't even know what he's talking about. Caixa preta, what is this? Black box. But you see that the disinformation, the misinformation just doesn't have any force, you know. So I wanted to do it this way. There is something else. I think what has disappeared in those paralyzed times is the common ground, is the place where you're able to interact, right? And this kind of work, voluntary work, like the people who make the election happen, is really what a country is. It's what makes us a country, and not just a bunch of people that happen to be born in the same place, you know? It creates something, it shows the importance of the common good, the common ground. And it's moving to me to see in the film the pride, you know? And these people were under incredible attack. They were scared. And I had made a film just before that was a little bit the origin of this film during the pandemic with the people who were volunteers in the studies of the vaccine against COVID. And in Brazil, it's forbidden to get paid for that. It has to be voluntary work. And again, it was a moment where to be for vaccines was to be communist, right? And so these people were being attacked, and I made the film with them, and I remember how much it moved me to see people that were not even necessarily from the left. They just wanted to do something for the common good. And I think the people who, and was making that film that I thought, I'm gonna now make a film about the elections with the people who make the elections happen. And so, I find, I think we learn a lot of things about the process, you know, that I didn't know when I made the film. And I had to really calculate to not take it, to find a space for it in the film. But I think we have the essence of the work for people that are working for democracy to exist.
Abel? Thank you so much.
Sandra, obrigada. Thank you. You just responded to what I was going to ask, which is really, what I saw yesterday made me think a lot about the previous film that I'd seen by you, Patients, the one on the clinical trials. And I was going to ask you about the continuities there, you know, how, if it made you think, if it's part of the same project of the speech machine, and also, you know, what it made you think about, and also methodologically, if it had taught you about, you know, I think there is something about training people and depending on people making images, the Zoom conversations, etc. But then you, in that movie, but also watching yesterday's movie, you made me think a lot about how viciado, I don't think biased is the best translation, but how viciado my gaze is, because I keep watching this movie is about the present and democracy in Brazil and the attacks, and seeing a lot of the same. So I wanted to ask you what you had learned, you know, about differences while making these movies. And you just shared a couple of examples, right? Learning about the process, learning about what brings us together and makes us feel part of a collective or of a contributing to a common good. But if you could add anything that you learned by making those films.
I always learn a lot because I never start a film. Many people make films to prove something. You know, they have a thesis and they want to illustrate or prove their thesis. I am almost the opposite. I like to enter a film having a lot of questions, and I know those questions are important, but I don't know where they're going to take me. I don't even know if there will be a film. So it's not so easy more and more to finance this type of film because people want, when you go get money to make a film, they almost want to see the film, you know? And for example, a Hungarian Passport that Pedro mentioned that I made more than 20 years ago was a film that I had no idea if I would become Hungarian, if I would get the passport, if I would get the passport the next day, if I would never get the passport. I mean, this was also the power of the film, not knowing. But it's harder and harder. Anyway, this film, I note, it was very interesting. I also said this yesterday. It was the first time I was making a film in which everybody who was making the film, all of us, were part of the film in a way, because we were also citizens going to vote. That created logistic issues, like the shooting had to leave time for the characters and the crew to vote, you know, especially the ones that were gonna vote for Lula. But much more complicated. People were so biased, were so taken by emotion that I remember in the editing room having to tell the editor, the protagonist of this film is Ferreirinha. And she couldn't watch it. She was, no, it's too much, I can't, you know? And, but of course, it was tough, it was tough. Sometimes some of the conversations, you know, I had to control myself to stay in the place of the film, to stay in the conversation mode, you know? But I'm used to do this because when I make a film, I see myself in the film as a character, as a tool, you know? So, for example, in the Hungarian Passport, this is just an example that will help you understand. For example, I asked the consul, do you need to pass an exam to get the nationality? And he explains to me, or he starts explaining, I'm not even asked. And I'm not filming, and he says something super important that I think, I need this to be in the film. I know I cannot tell him, I'm sorry, would you mind saying it again? Because I need to record this. Because I know it's going to be awful. He's going to sound fake. He's going to look. So I said, you need to do an exam? And I saw in his face, he was thinking, this girl is so stupid. I just told her, you know, I just told her. So he says it to me with more intensity. For the film is excellent, you know, he's like, you need to do. So I'm always looking at myself as a character, you know. I'm in the because every film, and this is not a trick, which is very important to distinguish. It's a mise en scène. A film is a mise en scène. Every film. There is nothing. If you come here and you film this room just as it is, probably you won't be able to express what's going on. You have to imagine how you're going to film. So this was I don't know if I answered. I think I went to a different, but anyway, I learned a lot. I always do, and you know, at the end, Ferreirinha breaks up with me, no? He said, "We're gonna stop here. It's impossible, no? It's like ending our relationship," and he's right. You know, what he says is true. It's right. The fact that it's impossible, it's sad. But it's true that I tried, he tried, we both tried. But we are in different worlds. And while I was making the film, I asked these characters to send me all the videos that they were sharing and getting. And every day I would get a big amount of videos. And I started putting myself in the place of a person who's watching all those videos every day, you know? And it was a good exercise because I started noticing that for everything I said, there was a video they had watched to address that question. It's an incredible machine, very well built. Like I said one day to Osvaldo, Lula was president of Brazil twice, and Brazil didn't become communist. Why do you say it's going to become communist now? I saw a video, always like, I saw a video that said that now is the time. And then it showed me the video. So you had Lula very young saying it's going to take a long time to have, equal rights. So it's very well, it's evil, but very well calculated,
Comment, remark?
Yeah, very quickly, thank you again, Sandra. Just one thing, going back to the sort of Rafa has left, but anyway, a generational thing that appeared here, Rafa and Melissa sort of addressed it, and you did. There is something about, the force, the power with which you describe this country being present, being sort of felt through the elections, that I wonder if it responds to a certain dream of a certain generation that grew up with the democratization, and for whom the path to democracy, whatever that means, really was possible, was kind of lurking in the horizon. And this is, if the answer is, even if it's more complicated than that, if the answer is there is an impulse of yours to kind of catch that democracy that was slipping away, there's also something super interesting running through your filmography again, because you start with, not you start, but in a certain moment you have the Hungarian passport, which is a skeptical question about identity. Obviously, the identity that you are talking about here, about being Brazilian, is not a static one. I mean, it's very complex. But again, there is something about not being skeptical about something that perhaps you lived and you felt and you went through when you were young. So does this make sense to you?
It's super interesting. Well, it's true that I'm also, I think he left. I'm also from a generation that when I voted for the first time, I don't remember, 20-something. There were no elections when I got the age to vote. And I see many parallels between this film and Hungarian Passport. I saw it when I was making, because it's the connection between the person and the state, and the state machine. And what does that mean, and what's the power that this machine can have or not? And it's true that in this film I'm more, I see the value of the state. And in Hungarian Passport I was only seeing how absurd were these ideas of national identity, So it's true, they are in like opposite sides of, and in between you had everything that happened. Because Hungarian Passport it's funny because there was a screening in Paris 2 weeks ago, and it was interesting to see the film with an audience and see that the film is super up to date. It almost talks more with the time, the present time, but for different reasons. Because when it was made, it was a time when globalization was a promise, and it was going to be great. It was going to allow multiculturalism in a better way. And it made evident that these national identities and feelings were artificial and oppressive. And now we have the other side of it, Anyway, it's very interesting.
Before we clap and thank Sandra, this is simply extraordinary, right? Arresting, captivating, just some of the words. I'm a character, I'm a tool, not knowing is part of the film, right? This logic of discovery, the making of a dispositif, right? And I don't film to be against the characters. I think you gave us this incredible complexity, but from a doer, from a creator's perspective, you know. So you gave us so much today, and you know, more power to you, Sandra. Keep coming back. We have tomorrow an event in anthropology, room 216 at noon, for graduate and undergraduate students interested in ethnographic storytelling, ethnographic and filmmaking and storytelling. So Sandra will be in a conversation about some of the issues we started discussing here. So if you are interested, we'll find a way to sneak you in as well. There will be lunch as well. So it's a continuation of the conversations. Thanks so much for the work you do and for being here with us.
Thank you.